The Ramayana took place before the Mahabharata, and this is the build-up to this massive cataclysm of conflict when nuclear weaponry, ray guns and so on, we're talking the end period of Atlantis, could be 25,000 years ago, maybe.
Wow.
I don't know. Rama was an avatar, as was Sri Krishna, born through the womb of a woman. The real reason for Rama's intervention was the fact that a space vehicle, a Vimana, known as the Pushpaka Vimana, was captured. Now, the story behind it's interesting, very interesting, particularly to those of us lucky enough to be familiar with the cosmic plan as described by Dr. George King and the Aetherius Society. These things can help us to see what was really going on here.
Hello and welcome back to the Spiritual Freedom Show. My name is Darren Ball, and this is the podcast helping you to awaken your chakras, to unlock your psychic powers, and to discover true spirituality. Now, during the time of Atlantis, a highly advanced spacecraft was stolen from the Himalayas by an evil practitioner of the dark arts, possibly leaving the fates of millions of people hanging in the balance. A divine incarnation was born upon Earth with a mission to retrieve it, and his name was Rama. The Ramayana isn't just mythology, it records a pivotal chapter in our true history on Earth, a great battle between the forces of light and the forces of darkness which has shaped our world for thousands of years. Keep watching for Richard's take on this cosmic drama.
Richard,
Darren,
let me set the scene again for our show today.
please do.
Something has been stolen. Not a priceless jewel or a sacred scroll, but a vehicle of light, Pushpaka Vimana, legendary spacecraft of the Ramayana. It has been taken by Ravana, fallen initiate, now a sorcerer of the dark arts who lords over Lanka, wielding the craft for his own nefarious purposes and posing a threat to all life. It cannot be allowed. Enter Rama, born among us, apparently as one of us, and yet not of this earth. A divine emissary with a mission. And what followed was not just any war, but a high-stakes campaign watched closely, even by other worlds. A titanic collision between the forces of darkness and the forces of light, which demanded divine intervention on Earth. So this episode is about Rama, avatar from another world, who stepped upon Earth as one of us to fulfill a sacred mission in the great unfolding of spirituality on Earth. And it's a story told in the Ramayana, as we know, and I'd love to explore today the reality of this story, because, it's told as a myth, a great epic, but what we have here, I think, under our very noses is a revealing account of one aspect of the true history of humanity on Earth.
I think you're right. I mean, I think the term myth, the term legend, the idea of allegory is a cop-out.
Yes.
It's not it's a way of saying this may be true, it may not be true, but it's still good. And you don't have to deal with whether it's true. People try to avoid truth.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. We're dealing here with an account, maybe an imperfect account. It is an imperfect account, as is the Mahabharata, as is the Bible.
Sure.
But there are true incidents here. And then they've been coloured by the way they've been recorded. Now, this was recorded by Valmiki in the way that the Mahabharata was recorded by Vyasa.
Okay.
My own view, and this is my view, is that those two people, Valmiki and Vyasa, were reading the Akashic records sometime after the event, because these events had to be recorded. And they were seeing what had happened. Then it goes through whatever translation process took place and the minds of people. Now, I think there is a difference, though. With the Mahabharata, you have a description of the late Atlantean conflict of the two evil forces, although one force was better than the other by a long chalk, but neither was really good. They were both using nuclear weaponry, both sides, and Sri Krishna, being the brilliant manipulator, a spiritual manipulator and karmic manipulator that he was, and strategist that he was, made sure that the best possible result could be brought from that dire situation. I mean, if it had been left absolutely unremitted at all, then you could have had in theory, the destruction of the planet. And that was avoided.
Yeah.
You could certainly have had, after that war, the whole planet ruled from the lower astral realms, or what you might say the hells,
Yes.
and taken over, and that didn't happen either. And Sri Krishna made sure of that with very little help. He had some people who did what he say they needed, a lot of help from what I can see anyway, encouragement, guidance. They would have made a few mistakes had he not been there.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that he...
Well, it gives an even greater sense of gravity to the whole
It
situation.
certainly does. Now, the Ramayana took place before the Mahabharata, the events in it. I
Got
should
it.
say.
Yeah. Okay.
And so Rama was an avatar, as was Sri Krishna. He came to Earth as an avatar, born through the womb of a woman, married to a very spiritual woman known as Sita, who is revered in Hindu culture, who was actually captured by the dark force in question, Ravana, in Sri Lanka, what we now call Sri Lanka. I think they called it Lanka then.
Yeah.
Now, here what you get, and we've talked about this before in some of those writings, is a tendency to focus on the personal, relatively petty lives of people, as opposed to the big global,
Totally.
world-defining issues.
That's what we're penetrating
This,
into.
yeah,
here, I
this
think.
is where Sri Krishna stands out like an absolute beacon of light in the Mahabharata, that he was solely focused on truth, humanity, the greatest good for the world, for the people of this planet, not on the petty personal matters. So the capture of Sita, the wife of Rama, or the consort, I think, wife, is focused on more than what I personally believe, and this is my take, I will say that, to be the real reason for Rama's intervention, which was the fact that a space vehicle, a Vimana, known as the Pushpaka Vimana, possibly the most famous UFO, whatever you want to say, in history, along with the Star of Bethlehem, probably.
True. Those two.
Those two. This was captured. Now, the story behind it's interesting, very interesting, particularly to those of us lucky enough to be familiar with the cosmic plan as described by Dr. George King and the Aetherius Society. And this is why the eyes that we're looking at these things through, in other words, with the knowledge we've been given through the Aetherius Society, can help us to see what was really going on here.
Exactly.
And what apparently happened is this evil intelligence, Ravana, had attacked what was called a kingdom, but probably some kind of retreat in the Himalayas, presided over by an intelligence called Kubera, who revered Lord Shiva in Mount Kailash, who I believe to be the Lord Babaji.
Okay.
So he had his own retreat there in the Himalayas. He wanted to be close to Shiva, as they put it. And this attack was made by Ravana, dark, evil force. And this is prior to the build-up to this massive cataclysm of conflict, when nuclear weaponry, ray guns and so on, it did exist.
Yeah.
Electronic weaponry, screens.
Yeah. More advanced than today, not less
targeted,
advanced.
laser probably targeted weaponry and so on. And you can see this from some of the descriptions and the effects of these weapons. So he invaded or attacked Kubera and stole this spacecraft known as the Pushpaka Vimana, took it down to Lanka.
Got it.
Now that could be very dangerous to the world as a whole, because that would be a very powerful weapon for Ravana to use as one of the dark forces. The dark forces were not united in that period. We're talking the end period of Atlantis. It could be 25,000 years ago, maybe.
Wow.
I don't know, but it was right at the end. They weren't united with each other. So he would have been a massive player, this Ravana. So he captured this craft. Rama came putatively to rescue Sita, which I'm sure he wanted to do, and he did do. But I think to the world as a whole, more significantly, to rescue this craft, which could have been responsible for the killing of, who knows, millions of people maybe, had it got into the wrong hands. And the whole story is about that. There's a lot of interesting aspects to it. Rama, we don't know what planet he came from. We know that Sri Krishna came from Saturn. I could only guess. If I was to guess, so don't take this as anything, he seems to have the characteristics of a Martian kind of intelligence. But I certainly don't know that at all. He engaged with the help of some various cooperators who gathered around him and helped him. Some of them are described as being monkeys. This is the way they do it in those days. Clearly, they weren't monkeys. There may be some way of describing them. And they fought this battle, and he did indeed retrieve it. There is an interesting little thing within this battle, which is that one of the lieutenants changes sides and plays a key role, sees the light, and he probably sees that he can't win. You know, what's strange about some dark forces, and it's even true of the most powerful, by far, homegrown dark force that we've ever had, who's often given the name Satan and other names, even that intelligence couldn't see, it seems, his fallibility. And that's strange. But this person, Vibhishana, possibly could see that he wasn't going to win against Rama, or possibly had a great conversion to the light, or both. Quite probably both.
Yeah, so not quite 100% pure, but
who knows? I mean, these things are complex. What does matter is, though, that he did. And there's an interesting moment where Rama himself is guided by a figure who's revered by the Hindus, known as Hanuman, depicted, I think, wrongly as being in a monkey body, who advises Rama to trust him, because a lot of his fellow advisors around him who are from this earth don't trust him. And you can see why. It looks like a ploy. But he does trust him. He does admit him into his team, as it were. Vibhishana identifies many things, including where this vehicle is.
I see.
Helps
so
him
can retrieve
and
it.
gives him other bits of information about how to combat Ravana. And this brings about the victory, and then eventually, I think Vibhishana is placed on the throne of Lanka instead of Ravana. So again, you think, but that's all done with the full agreement of Rama.
Yes.
So that's a kind of interesting sideline. But
Yes,
Rama himself had to fight the main battle, and he came here to do it, and he won it. And the craft is retrieved. Sita is saved. Vibhishana and his wife Sarama, they turn to the forces of light. And I would say it's a vital action prior to the final conflagration, which is described in the Mahabharata.
Yeah, there's a couple of interesting things that really stand for me. One is just putting it in the timeline and the context of this great unfolding of between the force of light and the force of darkness on Earth, and the evolution of spirituality on Earth, and seeing these different plays that are happening, and the divine intervention that has been required at different stages. And why. And a lot of people kind of will treat this as a story, but actually this is one, seems to me, essential puzzle piece in understanding our true history, and eventually the downfall of Atlantis, what we have risen out of, eventually, of this last 25,000 years.
Indeed. And actually, Dr. King and I, in the Contacts with Gods from Space, we did include this craft, and with a quote from the Ramayana, when morning dawned, Rama, taking the Pushpaka Vimana, sent him by Vibhishan, stood ready to depart. Self-propelled, was that Vimana. It was large and finely painted. And later that aerial and excellent Vimana, going everywhere at will, is ready for thee. That Vimana resembles a bright cloud in the sky, is in the city of Lanka. So this was an important development, and later on, many people were taken in that craft back. And this could lead maybe to something we've mentioned before, which is the fact that prior to Atlantis, 5 craft came down known as the cities of Shan. That's a terminology I haven't found anywhere else. But there are a number of Vimanas described in the Vedic text as being like aerial cities. Dr. King says in his introduction to the 9 Freedoms, some of the white magicians were taken away. Yeah. They were taken away from there and up to, it's described as to the Himalayas, but it could have even been beyond.
And so, so here we have the insight into one particular instance in which the action of a divine emissary like Rama and Avatar was required.
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously this is not the only time this has happened on Earth.
Not at all.
Do you want to give some other obviously Sri Krishna, that's the next one that happens, I suppose, in this.
That we know of, yes. Yeah. An avatar is a divine incarnation. It's someone who's born through the womb of a woman. And this is a tremendous limitation for these. I think for a moment we should think about it from their point of view. Yeah, you have perfect intelligences who don't even need to reincarnate on their planets at all, who are way beyond that, who actually agree to come down. Dr. King has likened it to us incarnating as pigs in a pigsty. And he wasn't exaggerating. They're coming down to live in this extremely limited way among us without their own powers. This is the thing that caused Dr. King the greatest distress. He didn't have his own powers. He had certain powers more on another realm than on this one. He was only allowed so much by our karma, not his karma.
Yeah.
And this is a terrible limitation.
No, I think it's a great thing to just, as we come to a close here, to remind ourselves that, we can think about the great story and they're coming and all that, but actually for them, that's a massive sacrifice.
We can't even imagine. It's a kind of living hell. In Dr. King's case, he had a tremendous sense of humor. I'm not going to say he was never happy, because he was. For example, when we were about to engage in one of his missions called Operation Sunbeam, and he might be on a mountain called Holston Down in North Devon that we visit regularly, and we were preparing for the coming of some other masters from a planet called Gotha to help with this particular mission. And he was there in front of his tent in a chair with a drink of whatever it was. I've never seen him so happy. So I'm not going to say he went round in a state of misery, and he didn't, not at all. And he had this great sense of humor. But the essence of his life was sacrifice. And he was the only person he reminded several of us of this more than once. He's the only person who could say that every breath he breathes, the only person in our organization who could say this, or pretty well most of the population of Earth, every breath he breathes is for us. He doesn't even have to be here, but he was willing to be here. He chose to be here. His soul leapt within him to come here and make this awful sacrifice. Now, there are two things that bring about the coming of an avatar to Earth. One is a particular dire need on Earth, but the other is the karmic allowance for that intelligence to come. And here you have to look at this wonderful, wonderful Saturnian intelligence, the Lord Babaji, who has been with us through the ages. All the way through the ages, been with us since the beginning of the Earth, really. And this, and probably more for the Earth than for us, but certainly for us, no question about it, and has at certain times taken karma, we are told, to allow certain avatars to come. And so it isn't an easy thing. I think actually there's a statement by the master Aetherius that it took an awful lot of karmic manipulation to give you George King. And he came at an absolutely critical time, the time we're living in now. We could have had another conflagration very easily.
Yeah, it could have been
in his lifetime. Yeah, born in 1919. And I see an equivalence actually in him, in the respect of him coming and Sri Krishna coming at that dire end period. And both of them brilliant strategists. Both of them, you're not going to pull the wool over either of their eyes about anything, and knowing what they're dealing with and dealing with the facts as they are, not as we'd like them to be. And very practical. But yeah, so there'll be a coming of the Master Jesus for a particular purpose at a particular time. The Lord Buddha, obviously, another one. Confucius, another one. Interesting that Confucius and Lao Tse came almost at the same time, because you have there, I think, very much a yin and a yang in that Confucius very engaged in worldly affairs. Lao Tse, who gives this brilliant, fantastic Taoist philosophy, coming at a similar time. Similar time, actually, to the coming of the Lord Buddha, too. It was a time of great change. It was a time when people were turning away, I think, from, belief in all sorts of humanized gods.
I see.
And looking within more. You see that in Buddhism, you see that in Taoism, which I think is one reason Buddhism flourished so much in China. There's tremendous parallels there.
Between the teachers.
Yeah. These were all avatars with different missions at different times, depending on the need of that time. possibly in that region, certainly affecting the world as a whole. They all left great teachings, Patanjali being another one. Dr. King told me he came to Earth to deliver the aphorisms.
Wow.
The
Okay.
aphorisms tell you exactly how to gain samadhi. They leave out one massive thing, world service. Deliberately, because that wasn't the order of the day. The aim then was to get as many people as possible into an enlightened state, preferably ascension. And I have been told, but it's only a verbal anecdote, that 6 of his followers did ascend.
Wow.
Patanjali's followers. It's an interesting thing because it's a very advanced, very direct, absolutely brilliant mechanism for getting from where you are now to that state, which is what was required. They wanted people to, and if they couldn't get that far, they wanted them to get to an elevated level. It's very interesting. In 1955, we got the first measurement of something called absorption.
Okay.
And this was given by the giver of the 9 freedoms, Mars Sector 6. And he gave it in October, I think it was October the 22nd from memory, 1955. It's his first ever transmission, and it was historic. And the Master Aetherius has described that as history, that Mars Sector 6 would even give a transmission through someone in an Earth physical body. But he describes this thing, and it is relevant to the avatars and their comings, called absorption. And the problem of the powers that be, they can radiate energy to our world, but it has to be absorbed by people on Earth. And he does, in that early transmission, say that the absorption factor in India, then, 1955, was much higher than other regions he was looking at. And I think if you go back, I'm not saying that would necessarily be true today, by the way, but it was then, and then early it would be. So the idea was to get people to this with Patanjali, with Sankaracharya, another avatar, to get people to an elevated condition, because that alters the absorption factor, because they're capable of absorbing higher energy levels.
Yes, I see.
This is how we look at it now. They didn't use that term.
Yeah, but in hindsight, yes, the strategy is clear about why they were taking that approach. So you have these avatars coming either to give this teaching to help raise the consciousness of people so they can increase the absorption factor, or they're coming to salvage or preserve the progress of spirituality and evolution of humanity, just to give another lens on the coming of the Master Jesus, because there's also a very orthodox view about what he came for, and that he's taken away the sins of the world. But what would we say based on this reading?
Well, I'd say a few things. I mean, first of all, we'll do that, but can we not pass over Moses as one I should have mentioned as well? There's so many you could mention, who was a brilliant avatar, who really saved the day. But coming to the Master Jesus, we are told that the Star of Bethlehem, another great craft like the Pushpaka Vimana, came from Saturn, that craft, came to bring about the birth of Jesus. Now, that's an interesting thing, is it not? Because Mary was with child before that.
Yes, I've always thought about
that.
So,
therefore, one can only conclude the Venusian consciousness was inserted, if that's the word,
at that time,
delivered or whatever. At that point, it raises many interesting things about divine birth, and we could go off on quite a tangent, because it's not the only virgin birth in history by any means. I mean, actually, the mother of Samson was incapable of childbirth, and she had an angel appear to her too, and Samson was born. But Jesus came for a particular reason, which was to avoid a catastrophe that was due on Earth. That was his prime mission. It's not. I don't think that's stated anywhere in the Bible that I know of. So sometimes their full mission is not disclosed, and there are also avatars that aren't famous.
Yeah,
Samson was another avatar. Hercules was another avatar, or Heracles. He's the same intelligence, Hercules and Samson, and you can see it. I've even seen. I was describing this to Dr. King. Somebody wrote a book about the similarities between Hercules
interesting.
and Samson, and he was right, because before that book was written, Dr. King had said it was the same intelligence, often known now as Adept Number 3. Really great, wonderful, brilliant, powerful, large, strong intelligence.
So to me, this is painting a story of That we aren't alone, basically.
We're not alone.
Let us remember these avatars who've come. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
What we heard there is a fantastic retelling of a story that most people have resigned to myth, but which I certainly believe was a pivotal victory towards the end of Atlantis for the forces of light. And I think it puts into perspective the coming of these great avatars from other planets, all as part of one cosmic plan for protecting, preserving, growing spirituality on Earth in spite of us. And it really makes you wonder, what would we have done without the coming of Rama, without the coming of Sri Krishna, and so many others? And what would we do even now without them? So if you enjoyed that show about Rama and his divine intervention on Earth, do subscribe to or follow the channel so you don't miss any future shows with more insights and practices that you can use to awaken your chakras, to unlock your psychic powers, and to discover true spirituality. Now, if you're interested in more right now, I do recommend that you check out this video over here about Sri Krishna and the end times Atlantean war. Thanks for tuning into the show, and see you next time.